Welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell, and we are reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell and turn on your notifications so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and X. Also, the audio versions are always found on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat, it's probably because you are subscribed, you've hit the notification bell, and turned those notifications on. So, when sharing with your friends, be sure to let them know. We also love to hear from you outside of our live show. Email us at johnnydellsfootballacademy@gmail.com, and you can always check out the website jfa49.com, as it is the most fun way to support the channel. Also, the way we boost the chat and boost the algorithm is to type out hashtag JD49.
All right. Can anybody hear me now? Can you give me a mic check on there? It says it's coming through. I gotta wait for the chat. This is the fun of when I'm broadcasting alone. No audio still. Okay. I will be right back. All right, we're going to hop in with the chat. Can you hear me now? Oh, they said I was good now. Well, there we go. Okay. We're good now. This is the fun. Sometimes you just have to turn it off and on again. That's literally all I did as I switched from one audio to and then back to what it normally was and had audio again. Nothing gets the chat popping like a 49ers quarterback throwing multiple picks in one game. I will say, look, the 49ers got back-to-back wins for the first time since September. So with that being said, I am trying to be in a better place for the last couple months, which is I will never again. I say this, but then next year I'm going to do this again. But I won't complain about a win. I won't complain about a win. Last season, we saw how hard it was to get wins at all. So just this year, I don't want to complain about a win. I will say I tended to have a little bit of heartburn over the first half. That was not what it was supposed to be. And I'll talk about some of those picks. I went back and watched two of them. At least I started watching the game film this morning. And I watched the first two picks, and we'll talk about that. But overall, it was good to see the wins, the team stack wins for the first time in over 2 months. It was the first 3 games of the year that the team started out that got 3 wins. And so here now we've actually stacked a win for the first time in a while. And I think a lot of that has to do with just this is the first time in a while that we've actually had continuity from week to week with the team. You know, for the first 2.5 months, pretty much every week you were coming out with 1 to 2 players getting hurt, and there was a lot of incontinuity with the team. Not incontinence, in continuity with the team. Well, there was the incontinence too, I guess you could say. But that they didn't have continuity as the games were going from week to week, and that really showed up on the field. There was the defense was dealing with communication issues and trying to find their way out. The offensive line dealing with their issues and trying to kind of find their way, and then the quarterbacks and receivers all in and out. So in all, it was nice. It's nice to get a win. Now, Adam and I, when we did our preview show, we talked about that it felt like this was a game that the 49ers needed to win by at least double digits, and they did. But this could have been even more. This could have been a big time blowout. But you get the 3 picks, and that obviously sets you back. We had talked about that. We didn't see the 49ers scoring less than 27 points. And I think he was either myself or Adam threw the caveat in there, unless we turn the ball over a bunch of times. And that's exactly what happened. And you scored less than 27 points. If you don't turn the ball over 3 times, you definitely score a number of points. So in all of that, the game went pretty much outside the turnovers, what we expected. The Panthers defense has been opportunistic, but it wasn't like they could really stop you from moving the ball on a consistent basis. Their offense, it wasn't like that you could see them consistently moving the ball and scoring against this defense. So it went about how you'd expect. It'll be interesting to head to Cleveland and see how that game goes. The 49ers have historically, not just this team, but historically have not been good in Cleveland. We have not won in Cleveland since like 1991. So, and then when you see the kind of, season that Myles Garrett is having, it's kind of ridiculous. That game has some ways going about it. And chat, nobody loves to hate 49ers quarterbacks more than the 49ers fan base themselves and their chat. So we'll talk about the couple picks, the first 2 picks. I will say I completely agree with what both Shanahan and Brock said about them in the post-game pressers. They both talked about it, that these were not bad decisions at all. The ball was late, and that's exactly what happened. It was late or off target. The first one, it was they were in cover 3 zone, and I thought from watching the broadcast that the middle safety sat, and I was thinking, why didn't we throw it down deep? And what happened was the middle safety took off with a crosser, and it was actually the backside corner that kind of comes into the play late. And this is where I don't like seeing them run all of these digs and crossers with Juwan Jennings. I just don't. Yes, he gives you the ability of a big catch radius a number of times to throw some of those high throws when you're making some of these layered throws. Juwan Jennings is not a receiver that's going to run away from a corner, especially not somebody like JC Horn. I just don't like seeing him run these. I've seen him get caught from behind too many times, and Brock took an extra hitch, and that gave Horn enough time to make up on it. He also Brock throws a very catchable ball, and he talked about this, and Kurt Warner's mentioned this last night as well. When you throw a really catchable ball, you're not throwing a lot of fastballs, a lot of number 1 balls. Everything is a number 2. So it's more that layered, it's that softer throw. You're trying to throw a really catchable ball. There's 2 things that does when you do that consistently, or there's 3 things. 1, you tend to have a higher catch percentage than other quarterbacks. You also have a higher catch percentage with the defense when you throw a lot of those. It makes it easier to catch for your receiver. It also makes it easier to catch for defenders when you're off target. 3, if your receiver isn't a guy that can separate and keep separation, because Juwan at one point had about 2 yards of separation. By the time the catch point was happening, that was down to about half a yard. If you have a receiver that's not going to maintain that distance as he's going, that gives a defender time to make up on them. And Juwan Jennings is a guy that definitely will make up space on Juwan. That's a route that, in the past was BA, and we'll talk about the BA situation here later. That in the past has been BA, that's been Debo. Those were the guys who ran those routes. Those were guys that once they cut and they accelerated, they were moving with a lot of intention. Juwan is not doing that. I don't know why Jordan Watkins isn't getting more playing time. I would like to see more speed in the receiver room in what we're putting on the field. And I don't know why Ricky Pearsall isn't getting more involved in there, why we're not running some of those. It seems like we're trying to use him for a lot of these clearing routes and stuff. But that means that Juwan Jennings is your guy that's going to be running a lot of these. And I just don't like these matchups. You should not be caught from behind as a receiver when you are playing against a cover 3 corner on a dig route. That is just, I don't like that. That shouldn't be a thing. But Brock has got to get that ball out one hitch sooner. He's got to put it on a little bit more of a line. He talked about both those things that, I don't disagree with the decision. The deep third safety completely vacated. It was play action. The underneath guys were completely sucked up. I mean, the middle of the field was wide freaking open as far as there was no defenders in that area. The only guy who could make a play on that ball is JC Horn, who still ends up making a play on that route. So I'm gonna put as much on receiver as quarterback for that one, because when you have that kind of an advantage as a receiver, you have got to win a little bit more. Like that route should be wide freaking open. It shouldn't even be a contested catch. Like that is, to me, I don't know. I don't like seeing that when you have when a situation like that of it is that much of a contested catch. It still doesn't absolve the quarterback for what happens there. The second pick, Brock had a mile of green grass in front of him. He also had Ricky open by 2 or 3 yards when he makes the decision to throw that ball. It was the same sort of situation. They're in cover 3 zone. We have a crosser come across, and the middle safety completely vacates. He tries to match, I think it's DeMarcus Robinson. He completely vacates the middle of the field. It's when Brock has got to be more decisive there. Are you going to run or are you going to throw? If you're going to run. If you're going to throw, set your feet and make a good throw. He tried to make a throw on the run. He didn't need to. He had Ricky open. The ball ends up going a little bit short, a little bit to his right, which is not actually normal for Brock. He normally leaves it a little bit too high into the left. And so it was third down. He probably had 15, 20 yards of green grass in front of him. And so it's like, it's there. Set your feet and throw. There was no pressure. Like he was running up, there's pressure on the outside, but he just step up in the pocket, climb the pocket, set your feet, make that throw. We've seen him do it before. I don't know if it's just this like sort of, I've got to make a play sort of things going on, just getting a little bit unsettled as a quarterback. Set your feet and make the throw. That should be a touchdown. It really, Ricky was open by a couple yards there. So, make that throw, deliver it in there. It should be, that throw should have been about 5 yards to Brock's left. It was a pretty bad miss. So that's where it's got to be better. It has to be better. There's no excusing on that one. It's not a bad decision, but it was not a good throw. Those both things can be true at the same time. I almost seen people saying that Brock isn't on time and that CMC is getting used too much. Look, I will say most of the game, Brock is on time. I watched through the first half and almost the first half, and Brock was on time for most of it. It was only those 2 plays are really the only ones so far that I'm seeing like he's not on time. And all these catches by Christian McCaffrey are not forcing the ball down the field. That these are plays that it's not designed for Christian McCaffrey. He's either it's a pressure beater, it's a hot that he's hitting Christian McCaffrey with, and they're bringing pressure and he's beating that, or they're playing softer coverage and he's throwing it underneath. That's what's happening through most of these catches here with Christian McCaffrey. It's not like, we've always said Brock needs to check it down more. He needs to check it down more. He was checking it down a bunch in this game. That wasn't the issue here. It wasn't trying to force these throws down the middle of the field. These are plays that are open. And as far as I can understand with the last interception, it was a similar thing of they ran the middle safety off and JC Horn from the backside corner comes flying across the field to pick off the dig. That one, Troy Aikman said it. George Kittle talked about it twice. He's like, I haven't seen somebody do that to us in years. That's one I'll put that one more on Kyle, because you've got to hold that backside corner with something. There needs to be some sort, either a leak route out there, something you got to do to hold that backside corner, because and it should have been noticed from the first pick, is that backside corner, which is the other guy, not Horn, was running across the field to match that, to pick up that dig. So, teams are cluing in on these a little bit more now, which we've been running these for, ages. So it is weird to see it in a game where suddenly somebody has a little bit different of a plan. So they've got to kind of reset and think about this a little bit of what do we need to do so that we're not tipping some of these, or that we can start taking advantage of these a little bit more when teams are doing these. If teams are going to have these outside corners just crashing over the middle of the field to try and pick off these things, you got to look at that. So, in all, that I think that covers Brock Purdy's picks. When we talk about offense, still, I think the guy that in the league is being slept on the most for MVP is Christian McCaffrey. The guy is clearly the MVP of the 49ers right now. And I love Brock as much as anybody, but he's also missed 8 games and has had all but one of his games be multi-turnover games. The Cardinals game last week was the only game he's had this year where he hasn't turned the ball over at least 2 times. So Christian McCaffrey is clearly the MVP of this team. And I think he should be in consideration for MVP in the league when you're talking about a team that has had the injuries that the 49ers have had. They've been banged up as they've been, and your team is still 8-4. I don't care about the strength of schedule. You're 8-4, and clearly the best player on that team is Christian McCaffrey. Clearly the biggest reason you have that record is Christian McCaffrey. When you watch the tape and you see what teams are trying to do to take away Christian McCaffrey and how it does open some things up for other people, Christian McCaffrey should be in the conversation for MVP. I know it's mostly a quarterback award, and people are talking about Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis. I would say Christian McCaffrey, I think, is still should be in consideration for MVP. When you look at, I look at Juwan Jennings' first touchdown, the Panthers were in quarters coverage, and they only rush 3 because they're taking a defensive end and they're asking him to chip on Christian McCaffrey as he's releasing out into the flat. We ran just a slant flat there with Christian McCaffrey and Juwan, and the hook player rushes out on Christian McCaffrey, and so you see 2 players open up wide to try and account for Christian McCaffrey, and we just throw the ball in right behind where that hook player was. As he vacates, we throw it in on the slant to Juwan, and Juwan gets in for the score. That's a play that's opened up by Christian McCaffrey. So, that's, you see plays like this all the time. You see that they're turning around and handing the ball off to him. They're getting it. He's getting first downs. He's forcing missed tackles in the pass game. So it's just, he needs to be in conversation for MVP. But turning our eyes to the defense, it was great to see the defense step up and protect the offense. We've seen that more this year than I think we even would even care to see, because this is a situation where if you look at where the youth is on this team, it's on defense, not on offense. The offense should be carrying this team. They should be scoring 30-plus points a game. And George Kittle talked about that. They know that as an offense, that they should be scoring 30-plus points as a team, protecting their young defense. But the young defense still stood up, and they made a bunch of plays. When you look at this defense, I think a lot of us can be captured into, well, we have guys who've played, been in the league for a number of years, but you actually start really looking at their defense. You go, yeah, but there's still a lot of inexperience, and a lot of inexperience under Saleh. Renardo Green is in his second year. This isn't like a 6-year vet. This is in his first year in with Saleh, not Sorensen. You look at Malik Mustafa. He only played one season and then has only played the last few games. This is somebody with less than 21 career starts or 25 career starts in his career. So it's not like this is a really experienced safety. This is also the first year in Saleh's system. This is the first real experience and reps he's had in Saleh's system. So there's a youth there. Jair Brown had never played under Robert Saleh or D'Amico Ryans. He was playing under Steve Wilkes first, then Nick Sorensen, now Robert Saleh. That is 3 different coordinators. He's in his 3rd season. He's been in and out of the lineup and different things. So he's not exactly that stable vet back there that would has seen it all and has been in this system forever and can be a coach on the defense. He's not that guy. The closest guy to that is Diamador Lenore. But you look at D. Winters. D. Winters has less than 25 career starts from really starting in there. This is his first season as a true starter. Last year, he was the 3rd linebacker. And so he's getting this experience and he's still learning a lot of ways. You had Tatum Bethune, who was coming in, and this was only his 2nd year in the league. And he was learning. And then he's out. Curtis Robinson is in there, who had not made a bunch of starts. Upton Stout's a rookie. He's making all these brand new starts as he's a rookie. Alfred Collins, a rookie, making all these brand new starts. You look at Sam Okuwanu, last year was really the first year at the end of the year that he was even getting really starting rotation reps. And so he's been playing a lot. You have Keon White, who has just come onto the team. He's starting to learn some things. They're starting to rush him from the interior more in Michael Williams' spot a little bit more. Kalia Davis has been around the 49ers for a long time, but he didn't have a lot of career starts. He was often just a rotational piece when he was out there, and he's been injured most of the time. So when you look at this 49ers defense, they're a defense that has been absolutely filled with inexperience, has been filled with young guys who are learning their way. And so to see them grow is really good, really neat, especially this game. They started recognizing plays better than they have up to this point in the season. And again, if you go back and you watch, it was a great episode. Upton Stout on the Richard Sherman podcast. It's a phenomenal episode because Sherman was talking to him and he's like, as you're going to see this stuff as it's coming, you're going to see more and more. You're going to see that you don't have to defend every route. That when you see a team, you can figure out that this guy, there's like one of three systems it's going to be. Once you identify that system, out of the slot on these downs, this is what's coming to you. On these plays, if the guy lines up over here, this is what it's one of 3 routes. You don't have to defend 100 routes. You have to defend 3 routes. And here's what you start looking for, and it was really good. You're starting to see the guys do that. And I talked about it, I think it was last Friday with Adam, where I said, I want to see this young defense start taking chances. I want to see him jumping some routes, because if you're going to give up, these long drives that are going to end up in a score anyways, you might as well try and take the ball away. And you might as well start jumping some routes, because if you're going to give up a score anyway, guess. And because if you're wrong, then you know what? It ends up as it would have anyways. But if you're right, you make a game-changing play. And so that's what we saw with them. Tig Brown coming up with 2 interceptions, the second one being one that he did absolutely that. We'll go to get it to a couple super chats right here. Cayman's Island podcast. Go check out his podcast. Just click on his icon. It'll take you to his YouTube channel. You can subscribe to his channel, hit the notifications button, and like his breakdowns. He's probably going to, if he hasn't dropped an episode this morning, I didn't see it come up on notifications, but he should drop here today. He said, I will ask the hard question. If Brock would have thrown another pick before the half, would you have benched him? I would have, and it hurts to say. I don't know. I'm people will take this as a defensive Brock. I'm somebody that you have to move real slow if you're ever going to bench your quarterback. And here's why. Okay. Jared Goff one time in the playoffs against the Texans threw 5 interceptions. And it wasn't the playoffs, obviously not against the Texans, but they're playing the Texans and he threw 5 picks. I think CJ Stroud threw 3 in that game. And I think the Lions won. You know, every quarterback's going to have a game like that at some point in your career, especially when you're in your first still, 32, 40 starts ish. So when you pull your quarterback in those sort of situations, you do it for one of two reasons. Like there was the Baltimore game where Brock got pulled. That's a game that gets out of hand, and you say, I'm going to protect you from getting hurt for the future. I remember Steve Young had that infamous moment against Philadelphia where the team was getting absolutely blown out by Philly in '94, and Seifert pulled Young in the game, and Young just went nuclear on him on the sideline. So I'm a slow mover with that. Like I wouldn't have pulled Jared Goff when he threw 5 picks with the Lions because, that's like if you're still in the game, it's really hard to damage your quarterback's credibility in that moment and start saying, okay, you start throwing some picks, we're gonna yank you. Just because when you insert that backup, that's somebody that's not fair to the backup because they're being thrown in to try and cover up a situation where the starter's struggling with a game plan that they didn't practice that week against looks that they didn't practice taking reps against those looks that week. So I would not have done it. And I say that in that I wouldn't do that pretty much for most. If you've got your guy and your starter, you ride the ups and downs. There's going to be some of those. I think where Brock has to get as a quarterback is the turnovers have got to be minimized. If you look at why Matthew Stafford is having the best season of his career, it's not just the touchdown passes. It's that Matt Stafford has only thrown 2 picks. That is an incredible year. Yes, he has a plethora of great weapons on that team. He's also, they're having games like against the Seahawks where they're only scoring 21 points and he's trusting his defense. He's not forcing the ball and he's not throwing picks in that game. Like he's only thrown 2 picks on the year. That's where Brock's got to get to is being okay with that. And what I mean by that is if you find yourself late, you say, my bad, I was late. I can't make my being late worse. Don't make a mistake worse. And that's one thing that Brock can do is he will make a mistake worse. And those parts of him have got to start to be curtailed. And that can improve. People say, well, that's just who guys are. Brock is a young quarterback. He still is. And, we see, again, I point to Matthew Stafford. I point to different guys that Tom Brady got so much better throughout the years as he was in the early years as a quarterback. Guys can continue to grow. Steve Young didn't really start for the 49ers until he was 29 and 30. And he got way better as he went. He got way better over time. So, these things, they can improve, but they have to improve because it's not acceptable to get the picks. But I would not have pulled him. No, I wouldn't have pulled really any quarterback that I've committed to as a starter. So I'll move on to the next one. He said, a team wants to peak at the right time, and we are that. We're starting to peak at the right time as far as from the defense. Let me scroll back and I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything in the chat because I starred those and that's in a different menu. You want to peak at the right time. And that's what we see with the defense. I will say, our safeties definitely, this is the best game I saw from our safeties all year long. And it wasn't even close. If we even think back to the first pick by Jair Brown, that play is actually set up by Malik Mustafa the play before. If we kind of rewind back through everything, the Panthers they did a little rollout pass, and it looks like Bryce Young's going to have an open lane to run in for a score. And Malik Mustafa comes up and stops him about 2 yards short of the goal line. And that becomes a huge stop because the very next play, Bryce Young throws a pick to Tig Brown. So those safeties, Malik is playing faster. He's playing more violent. He's always played pretty violent, but he's playing with more, I guess, suddenness, more decisiveness. Same thing with Jair Brown. These guys are looking better. Upton Stout nearly came up with a pick himself on a great read of a play. So love the way that they're really starting to see. Love to see that Upton Stout is starting to get it. The light bulb is really going off. I watched the first couple drives on defense, and again, there was another play. It was like his reaction to what was going on was just faster than it's been. And he's starting to play with what his physicals show. And people, this is where I always have a hard time with fans and people is people will prognosticate and point out and preach it on the social medias of you need to let the young guys play. Let them go get their lumps. They've got to take their lumps. They've got to learn, and you need to get them out there and play. So they do that with an Upton Stout, and then Upton Stout starts getting targeted by a lot of teams. And then everybody starts saying Upton Stout isn't it, man. Everybody's going to go after him. You can't have this kid out there. Everybody's targeting him. And you go, which is it? Do they take their lumps? And are you okay with that? You said they should take their lumps and learn and grow. And what does lumps mean other than they are making mistakes and getting burned on it and getting hurt on it? So either you're okay with that or you're not. Which is it? Because people will sit there and say Jordan Watkins needs to get a lot of playing time. But then if he blows a blocking assignment or runs a wrong route, people are going to turn around and say, Jordan Watkins wasted pick, man. Okay, either you say that we need to be patient with the rookies and young guys, or we don't. Which one is it? We need to be certain about that. Upton Stout has been in that situation. His potential is off the charts for that position, for slot position. He can be the best slot corner in the league. He has the measurables, the potential, the physical traits to do it. He's had to learn how to play that at the NFL level. The light bulb is starting to go off. Starting to come on. We are starting to see that we see that he is, he's recognizing things that are happening. He's being more aggressive, and that is really good for this defense. That is what is leading to some of these plays, to the scrambles that there was one. It was ended up being a holding penalty, but I thought Bryce Young probably should have entered the concussion protocol over. D. Winters absolutely leveled him on a helmet to helmet. But there was a couple checkdowns that were that way that absolutely Upton Stout forced that keep the ball short of the first down, and they end up punting. There's big time tackles. Like he's playing a lot more aggressively and seeing things. It's all starting to come together for him, and it's starting to come together for this defense. And that's exciting as you're going down the stretch. They've got a really important 2 games here and the bye week where they've got 3 weeks that you should be able to handle your business. You should be able to start everything come together and start coalescing so that when you get to these last 3 games of the year, you should be 10-4, and you should be right in the thick of the playoff race, and you should be playing your best ball. That should be happening here over the next 3 weeks. With that, the Panthers, they were a team that we talked about Friday. They're a team with a decent record, but they're not as good as they seem. They just can't compete with the upper tier teams. And I think one thing I will also talk about in this, as it speaks to roster construction, I've seen different things throughout the year. People are saying, well, this is a lost year anyways. We should start trading different assets. I've seen people say we should trade Christian McCaffrey. He's washed. He's old. He's not doing as well. We should trade him, gather picks for the future, and move on to that. And I will say absolutely not, because to quote Dr. Phil, if you look at the Panthers, you say, how's that working for you? If you look at the Panthers and you say they traded away Christian McCaffrey, they got a bunch of picks from the Christian McCaffrey trade. I think we sent 4 picks for Christian McCaffrey. How's that working for you? Didn't really work out for the Panthers real well. They got all those picks. You know what? There it was. So I didn't see how Samo got hurt yet. Haven't seen in there. I don't know the extent that people are talking about it as being a significant injury. He's been battling through stuff. I don't know how many more injuries we can take to the defensive end spot. This would be our 4th defensive end with being out for significant time. When you start looking at Yetur Gross-Matos, Micah Williams, Bosa, and then Sam O. I mean, good Lord. Just getting wild there. I'm going to take a little refresher of the coffee. I love my my pottery mugs. But we'll get to the BA situation. We'll end up on this. The BA situation. So it really kind of dropped as a bomb. I think it was Friday night or Saturday night. He was where that the 49ers, there was a bombshell report by both Michael Silver and Diana Rossini, who said that apparently the 49ers had voided Brandon Aiyuk's contract guarantees. That he was due an option bonus in that was guaranteed. It was an option bonus that was guaranteed. It was kind of one of those weird things. It's basically it's a bonus you build in later in the contract so that you pay out that bonus then, and then it prorates over the rest of the contract. So it's less cash that you have to pay at the front end, but it still has to go in escrow. It doesn't affect the first 2 years as far as the proration. So it's not like the signing bonus, so it's a way to keep the first 2-year cap hits a little bit lower. And then you build in that guaranteed option bonus that does have some stipulations on it, but has then a way to trigger that and then spread that over the last 3 years of the contract. And it gives you an ability to renegotiate a little bit later and then lower somebody's and prorate that back over the rest of the year. So it's a mechanism to keep the first 2 years of the contract lower in cap hit, but still up the guaranteed money and have that money then spread out over multiple years, not just allocated in 1 year like base salary. So that's what the guarantee was that BA had in his contract, was a guaranteed option bonus. And the 49ers apparently voided that. And it was seen as, oh man, this is the end of any sort of relationship with BA. And I'm not saying it's not, we'll get to that. That BA hasn't been there, and there's been the questions with BA for several weeks is, he says he's week to week, it's week to week, it's week to week. And then Kyle Shanahan says, well, that's kind of up to Brandon when he's going to be activated and stuff. And you go, well, that's a little weird. And then we see this, and it sounds like the 49ers, something in there that they voided this over BA's rehab and return during the season. And then it gets out that this was actually something that happened in July, that we are just now hearing about this 4 months after it happened, that something with what was going on, the 49ers got lawyers involved and they voided that bonus in July. And then Brandon Aiyuk turned around and didn't appeal it, which is a big step because, I mean, we're not talking about a little bit of money. This is $26.899 million. This is about $27 million guaranteed to you that you're not even going to fight. You're going to say, nah, no, we're fine. You want it gone? I'm out anyways. We're done. And then, I mean, like, putting this timeline together is really weird because it's like, then you see during training camp in these preseason games, Brandon Aiyuk's there. He's there with the team and he's running routes. And he's looking like he's almost ready to come back. And this was after they had voided his guarantees. And so, Richard Sherman talked about this a little bit. He said he's not going to get into everything because he has some inside information. That, obviously he's still got connections with people there in the building, and he's going to ask somebody. He's going to send somebody a text and say, "Hey, dude, bro, what's going on with this?" Reading the tea leaves on what's going on, because then we're seeing Jay Glazer comes out and says, look, the 49ers are not shutting the door on Brandon Aiyuk coming back. If Brandon wants to play this year, that they would love to have him back, but it's up to Brandon Aiyuk at this point. That those are clearly coming from John Lynch or Parag. One of those two guys is telling Jay Glazer this directly. They're telling, because Ian Rappaport comes out, says the same thing. Tom Pelissero comes out, says the same thing. Everybody's reached out to the 49ers, and the 49ers brass is all saying the same thing. So there's two things that are going on here. One, I think BA is getting some really bad advice from people that are players. We talk about that players always have to be careful when agents and different people get involved, because agents are always going to push players to do things and try and get every last penny out. And sometimes that can really, make things contentious with teams. BA's agent is not going to advise BA to not keep that $27 million, because that agent, that's like a $3-some million loss for that agent. He's going to sit there and say, this was a terrible decision, Brandon. I'm suspecting that what's happened here is BA didn't want to do his rehab in Santa Clara. Jimmy G didn't want to do his rehab in Santa Clara. Bosa didn't do almost his entire rehab from his 2020 ACL tear in Santa Clara, but he didn't have an option bonus that was tied to that. We've seen a lot of guys do not like to do their rehab necessarily with the team doctors and with their strength and conditioning staff. And I've been talking about this for a while, that there is an issue there. And I think some of the players are starting to recognize this, and that and there's a reason why some of these guys want to do their rehab away from the 49ers facility. They want to be with guys that they trust, that guys around the league will say, you need to be with these dudes. They know what they're doing. So I think there's bad advice. I think there's family members. When you have too many people around you that really, really believe in you, which you need in life and you need as a player, they can also oversell you on you. The fact is, Brandon Aiyuk is going to look at this after the end of the season, and he's going to say, you know what? I see these wide receiver contracts that are going out there. If I could hit the free agent market, and I know there was a bunch of teams that were willing to give a second round pick for me, I can go anywhere. I can go anywhere and make $32 million a year. I think that's what BA thinks. I think that's what people around him are telling him. There's going to be a lot more apprehension about teams doing that when you say, I am so willing to get out of a situation that I am willing to give up big amounts of money, not show up to the facility, and not talk to my coaches for 2 months. Because whatever has happened, whatever ghosting he's done with the 49ers and whatever issue there, like the fact that Kyle Shanahan said, I haven't talked to him in a while, you can say, well, the head coach ain't talked to me. No, you are the one that is trying to keep your career afloat. Because here's what's going to happen. Every coach who is interested, if you hit free agency, is going to call Kyle Shanahan and say, what were the issues, Kyle? Let me know. And Kyle's going to say, BA did this. I didn't hear from him in 2.5 months. And they're going to say, I don't know if I want a guy, that I try and check in on during OTAs, and he doesn't text me back. Or whatever it is. I don't know if that's the situation, but I'm just saying, you start setting this up, it's not going to look good for Brandon Aiyuk in any which way. If Brandon Aiyuk really wanted to up his value come this offseason, which he's still under contract with the 49ers, the 49ers could keep him under contract and refuse to pay him if he doesn't show up. They have he doesn't understand. He doesn't have the huge amount of leverage here. That option bonus is off the table now. So his base salary next year is really low. So you can sit here and say, well, I'm not going to play. The 49ers lose out very little, and you don't show up, then they void your base salary too. So, like, this is Brandon Aiyuk is being told he has more leverage, I think, than he has. And right, wrong, or indifferent, whether the 49ers are doing him wrong or whatever, that is not a good situation for Brandon. Brandon Aiyuk's best interest right now is to get back out on the field the moment he's healthy and go make some big plays. So, that's where it's at, and it's a situation where I think both sides are at fault here. I think if the 49ers are looking at this and saying, Brandon, you had to do your rehab here. If a guy doesn't trust the team doctors, in my opinion, you have not made your doctors and your staff trustworthy. There's too many guys who've been hurt. So I don't blame him for not wanting to be there. On the other side, Aiyuk, that's a lot of money, man. Like, whoever's advising you, you need to not listen to them anymore. That's just what it is. If I'm the 49ers, opening day of the new league year in March, you know what I'm doing? I'm dangling Mac Jones and BA in a trade to Minnesota for one Justin Jefferson. That's what I'm doing if I'm the 49ers. I'm looking at this because BA is still under contract. He is not a free agent. And I think you dangle those to the Vikings, they're going to be intrigued. They will be intrigued because there's a lot for them to gain there, and they would still have the rights to Brandon Aiyuk. So that's where it's all at. I think that's what's going on. It's a situation that is developing. We'll see where it is. Going forward, though, I'm going to be diving into the film for the next couple days, trying to get that review video out. It's a short week. These weeks hit us all hard, and I want to get it out before Thanksgiving because come Thursday, we're going to have a lot of turkey, a lot of food. I'm going to have a lot of mashed potatoes. I make some great mashed potatoes, and a lot of eating. We can be thankful, and everything at the end of all of this, the 49ers are 8-4. I think if you told any of us that the 49ers are going to be 8-4, 12 weeks into the year, we would say, yep, that's what we would hope for in a best case scenario. And we are. And the team is still not playing their best football. So they're 8-4. I'm thankful for that. The team has a trajectory in the right direction. I'm thankful for that. Their next two games are games that you should win. I'm thankful for that. The team has a franchise quarterback. I'm thankful for that. I don't care what y'all say in the chat. I'm thankful for that. We have, I think, the best dual threat running back since Marshall Faulk. Maybe the second best ever. Sorry, Roger. CMC's just different, man. And I'm thankful for that. We have George Kittle, and I'm thankful for that. So we are a team that is headed towards 10-4, should be 10-4. Here at the end, we are playing meaningful football heading into the last week of November. We couldn't say that last year. Last year, it was almost a foregone conclusion with everything that had happened. The 49ers were not going to make the playoffs. And we spent the last 4 games of the year just watching them die a slow death. And so I'm thankful that this time of year, we have passionate discussions in the chat about situations, because if we were a team that was completely out of it right now, we wouldn't be having these discussions. We would be having a discussion on who should the 49ers draft or who should they trade for right now for next season. And we're not having those conversations. We're talking about what do the 49ers need to do to be better by the end of December. And I'm thankful for that. So this Thanksgiving week, be thankful for a lot of things. Hug your family, keep them close. But until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. And as always, go Niners.